What if I told you China is training near America's doorstep? Not in the South China Sea, but right off the coasts of Florida and Texas. This isn't fiction. It was shown on Chinese state TV. On December 19, 2025, China's state TV, CCTV, broadcasted unusual war games conducted by the Chinese army in the city of Xuchang in Hainan province. These exercises simulated a large-scale conflict between Chinese forces, red, and Western forces, blue, representing the United States. The real surprise was the location: the Caribbean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, and near Cuba, just off Florida and Texas. This raised serious concerns in Washington. Any U.S. military movement toward the Indian Ocean or the Gulf would likely pass through the Caribbean Sea and the Panama Canal. This created a direct risk of confrontation. The deeper message was clear. China is no longer preparing for conflict only in its region. It signals the ability to project power into what was once considered America's strategic backyard. This shift is part of a broader transformation. Over the past 2 decades, China has built significant influence across Latin America, including Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, a region historically dominated by the United States. Today, China is the largest trading partner of South America, and the second largest across Latin America after the United States. Chinese state-owned companies have become major investors across key sectors: energy, infrastructure, technology, advanced industries, military cooperation, and even space. How did China achieve this? The Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, identified 37 ports linked to Chinese companies in Latin America and the Caribbean. 10 are directly owned or operated by Chinese firms. 27 are tied to China through financing, construction, or equipment. These ports are color-coded by risk: red for high, orange for moderate, and yellow for lower. The 3 most critical are Kingston in Jamaica and Manzanillo and Veracruz in Mexico. These ports are dangerous not just economically, but also strategically. China invests billions, often through the Belt and Road Initiative, into infrastructure projects. Gradually, it builds influence and strategic access. Unlike the US, China doesn't always need formal military bases. Instead, it relies on economic control and strategic positioning, creating influence without direct confrontation. These ports could also serve military and intelligence purposes. They provide access to sensitive data, including U.S. naval movements and logistics. This is an example of dual-use infrastructure, civilian systems that can quickly be adapted for military use. China has developed missile systems that can be launched from cargo containers. This means missiles could be fired from commercial ships. With China's dominance in global shipbuilding and its growing control over strategic ports, all it needs is launch points. Latin America provides dozens. China's influence in Latin America isn't new, but what's happening now is on a completely different scale. After joining the World Trade Organization in 2001, China's trade with the region exploded, growing at an average rate of 31% every year. By 2024, trade reached over $518 billion, and it's expected to hit $700 billion within a decade. But this isn't just trade. China is securing critical resources: copper, oil, and most importantly, lithium. In fact, Nearly half of the world's lithium reserves are concentrated in Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, what's known as the lithium triangle. And China is moving fast to control it. But the strategy goes beyond economics. One of China's key goals is isolating Taiwan, forcing countries to choose between Beijing and Taipei. In 2023, Honduras cut ties with Taiwan and recognized China. And today, China's influence in Latin America isn't just growing, it's reshaping the region, including in space and satellite technology, a domain that could challenge U.S. dominance. Where is the United States? It's watching, but struggling to respond effectively. Over the past 2 decades, Washington has tried to counter China's rise in Latin America. In 2021, President Joe Biden and the G7 launched the Build Back Better World initiative to rival China's Belt and Road. But the impact was limited. In 2022, the America's Partnership for Economic Prosperity followed, again, with modest results. Because while the U.S. was announcing plans, China was delivering real money, infrastructure, and fast execution. At the same time, Washington focused on warnings about security risks and espionage. But for many countries in the region, there were no real alternatives. During COVID-19, China stepped in with vaccines and medical supplies when they were urgently needed. Brazil is a clear example. It initially moved to block Huawei from its 5G networks, but later reversed its position due to economic pressure and existing Chinese involvement. The U.S. also relied on pressure, especially during the Trump era. But decades of intervention created distrust across Latin America. This leaves a key question: promises or immediate results? Former U.S. diplomat Leland Lazarus warned that Washington must offer real alternatives at scale, or risk losing leadership. And globally, the balance is shifting. As Nassim Nicholas Taleb noted, the U.S. share of the global economy fell from around 20% in 2007 to about 15% today, while China rose from 6% to over 20%. Even militarily, the U.S. spends nearly $1 trillion a year, while China spends less, but with increasing efficiency. This isn't about taking sides. It's about understanding reality. The final question: is a direct confrontation coming, or will Latin America become the decisive battleground? If you found this analysis insightful, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Your feedback helps us cover more stories like this, and we'll see you in the next episode.